Millions of years ago. It was the age of unknowing. A time when the earth was not yet tamed, ruled by titanic forces of nature and beasts whose very shadows could swallow a man whole. Time was measured not by seasons, but by the slow, grinding movement of continents and the birth of mountains. Deep within the heart of this colossal prehistoric world lay an emerald jewel, a jungle so vast, so dense, it was a living fortress, a green cathedral where sunlight dared only to whisper. Here, the air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and life eternal. This was the silent cradle of an early human tribe, a people whose name is lost to time, but whose struggle defined the dawn of man. They were simple folk, perhaps 50 souls, united by the vital knowledge of survival. Their existence was a tightrope walk between the hunger of the jungle and the warmth of their cave. They hunted the great woolly rhinos and scavenged from the mighty megatherians, the gigantic ground sloths, always watchful, always humble before the raw power of the megafauna. Their center was the fire, not a controlled flame, but a carefully guarded, continuous ember, captured perhaps from a lightning strike or a slow-burning natural source. It was a flickering, temperamental god they worshipped for its gifts of warmth, light, and protection from the unseen nocturnal terror. They had yet to learn how to create fire. They only knew how to keep it alive. Their chief, named Kael, was the keeper of the flame, the one who bore the sacred responsibility of ensuring the tribe survived the cold, endless nights. For generations, this delicate balance held. The jungle offered sustenance. The fire offered safety. They lived in profound, almost biblical, peace. They believed that the deep, trembling sounds beneath the soil were merely the sleepy sighs of the great Earth Mother, a part of the jungle's vast, benevolent power. They were wrong. The cycle was broken on a morning that felt no different from any other. The hunters, led by Kael's son, Prehistoric, had ventured to the eastern hunting grounds. The air was still, too still. The usual symphony of jungle insects was muted. Even the birds flew high, circling wide above the trees, their calls thin and anxious. Prehistoric paused. He was a hunter, and his senses were the tribe's life insurance. He felt it first in his feet. A low, rhythmic thrumming, a deep vibration that seemed to travel not through the surface, but through the very bedrock. It was not the sound of a herd of mammoths. It was mechanical, resonant, and terrifyingly close. They began to retreat, confusion turning rapidly to panic. And then, the earth itself began to convulse. Not a sudden, sharp shock, but a heaving, sickening swell. Dust erupted from cracks, trees shuddered, and the ground began to weep dark, fine soil. The sound that followed was unlike anything in the tribe's memory. It was a high-pitched, chitinous clicking, thousands upon thousands of hard bodies scraping against rock, escalating into a terrifying, unified roar. It was a sound that announced the coming of a plague. The tribesmen stopped, frozen by a sight that should not exist. From a colossal rupture in the earth, a wave of darkness surged out. They were monstrous, insectoid horrors. Megamyrmex Gigantus, the giant ants of the deep earth. These were not living creatures in the way the tribe understood life. They were machines of warfare, forged in the lightless, pressure-cooked heart of the planet. Each one was the size of a grown man, armored in thick, rust-colored chitin that deflected spears like pebbles. Their 6 legs moved with a terrifying, synchronized efficiency. But it was their heads that instilled true primal terror. They possessed jaws, known as mandibles, that were curved, serrated blades, operating with hydraulic force. The sound of their jaws snapping, a sharp, bone-crushing crack, was the sound of death being measured out precisely. The tribe's defense collapsed instantly. Prehistoric threw his best stone-tipped spear. It struck the lead behemoth, the queen's guard, with a hollow thunk and fell uselessly to the ground. The creature barely flinched. The hunters, brave enough to face a cave lion or a short-faced bear, found themselves facing an enemy that felt no fear, only the mindless collective drive of the hive. Kael the chief, watching from the periphery, understood the despair. The ants did not retreat. They did not tire. Their purpose was simple: to purge, to consume, to claim the surface world as their new dark kingdom. The tribe scattered, a wave of humanity desperate to outrun a tide of hardened, unstoppable death. They ran not for the safety of their cave, but for the open forest, knowing instinctively that their familiar sanctuary was now merely a trap. The chase was a slaughter. The ants were too fast, too numerous. A young mother stumbled. A giant drone was upon her in a heartbeat, its mandibles raised. In a desperate final attempt to save her, her husband, a man named Zoran, snatched the last remaining burning torch from the camp's crumbling remains. It was the ancestral fire, the gift they had only ever kept, never truly wielded. He did not throw a spear. He thrust the fire, the single fragile spark of human knowledge, directly into the creature's massive head. The effect was instant, catastrophic, and deeply revealing. The hardened shell, immune to stone and wood, recoiled instantly from the lick of the flame. Where the fire touched, the chitin did not shatter, but shriveled, boiling, and smoking with a sickening hiss. The monstrous ant stopped its attack, its coordinated mind fractured by the sheer novelty of pain. It thrashed, confused, before collapsing in a smoking heap. Zoran stood, not as a running victim, but as the architect of a new age. The fire, quickly! Their fragile god of the night, was in fact their most potent weapon. It was the spark of human intellect against the brute force of the primeval world. They finally knew how to use the fire, not just feed it. The message spread through the scattered survivors like, ironically, wildfire. The fire hurts them. Kael, seeing the smoking corpse, felt the fear leave him, replaced by the cold, clear focus of a true leader. He ordered his warriors to retrieve every burning ember, every glowing stick, and to use the dry brush of the jungle to create 100 more. The battle for the valley had begun, a siege led by the most improbable of weapons. The strategy was simple but devastatingly effective. Drive them back to the source. The humans formed a line, not of spears, but of flickering, roaring torches. They attacked the flanks, using the terrifying light to herd the scattered ants. Every step back for the ants was a step forward for humanity. They learned the ants' weakness quickly. Their compound eyes, designed for the dark, were blinded by the intense light. Their thick, dark shells absorbed the heat quickly, turning the space beneath the armor into a suffocating oven. Torek, now leading the charge alongside his father, used the terrain. They lit brush fires on the ridges, funneling the mega ants into narrow ravines. The air filled with acrid smoke and the frantic echoing clicks of the trapped insects.
Run, quickly!
The humans, though fewer in number, fought with the desperate courage of a species realizing its own potential.
Millions of years ago, deep inside a prehistoric jungle, an early human tribe lived in peace, surrounded by nature's silence. But one morning, the ground began to move. The hunters stopped, fear in their eyes. From beneath the soil, monstrous ants erupted, giants with jaws strong enough to crush bones. The tribe ran, but there was no escape. Then one spark of fire changed everything. The humans fought back, swinging burning torches, pushing the beasts into their own lair. By dawn, only ashes remained.
Simply repelled,
the tribe had won,
deep into the smoking,
and the world would remember this place forever
city. The humans
as the Valley of
sealed the rupture
Fire.
with massive boulders, rolling them down with collective strength, burying the nightmare beneath a fresh layer of fear and stone. When the first glorious rays of the true sun finally pierced the canopy, they illuminated a valley changed forever. The silence that returned was not the peaceful silence of the past, but the hushed silence of a battlefield. The ground was scorched, littered with the black, brittle husks of the defeated. It into a tool of salvation. From that day on, their lives were never the same. They did not just keep the fire, they learned to make it. They carried it with them, a portable wall of safety, a symbol of their dominance. They began their true journey out of the shadows. And the valley, scarred and smoking, where Ep ate the ultimate power of nature met the defining ingenuity of man, was remembered by every generation thereafter. It was consecrated in flame and immortalized in the memory of the tribe, known forever, and to all of time, as the Valley of Fire.